Well, I do thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Coach. I count it a privilege to be here with you, gentlemen, and your parents. And I want to start right with where Mark Steyer was last week. He did a great job of setting you up with some really important information. Very simple, but very profound. And that's basically what he's trying to get at, men, is that you have to own your part in relationships. So he gave you 7 words. I'm sorry, I love you, forgive me. That sets you up to be a person that owns your part of things. Now think about how important that is on a team. You know, it is our nature that when things are going badly, whether it's a relationship or out on the football field, it is our nature to immediately come up with the blame of others. And this started clear back in the garden with the first sin. First things out of Adam's mouth. When God comes to him and wants an account of what's happened, how they've sinned, first thing out of his mouth, well, that woman, he's already pointing at her, that you gave me, Lord. That many words out of his mouth, and he's already spread the blame that far, instead of owning it. And so, man, that's very simply, in a nutshell, what Coach Steyer was giving you. And I want to circle back to that as we go here. Part of the reason why Coach asked me here, and I brought my books, and if any of you want a copy of a book to go deeper on some of the points that I hit, there's a box of them up here, and you are free to take one. But I wanted to show you this one because Mark Steyer's on the front of it. You like that? That's young Mark Steyer at Ohio State. And so part of his story's in there with other players. And then this one's the one I wrote on marriage. The football book is about handling discouragement, moving from one season of life to another. And then the other one's about marriage. So we're going to talk on some of those things. But as I thought of this topic, what women want in men, we have to start with a basic question first of where you're coming from. And that is, what women? Do you care? You know? Are you a guy that's terribly particular? You know, when they train snipers, they train them to aim small, to miss small. You heard that before? That's really important in their training. And that is my admonition to you, that you aim small, so you miss small. Now, the problem is the majority of the population, as Jesus predicted would be the case, the majority of men aim at all. And what I mean by all is, their standards basically, is she pretty? Does she get my motor running? And when you aim at all, guess what? You miss all of God's blessings that he intended for you to have. So if you're like many men and that's where you just plan on staying, then this is a short 2-minute talk for you. Because if you're just going to aim at all, it's real easy to figure out what women want. When you're aiming at just women in the world in general, all you need to know is this one thing. They want attention. And they want it nonstop. And you'll probably be pretty good at giving it to them at the beginning of the relationship, you know, because your motor's going and there's things you want. And so you'll give them lots of attention. That's what they were seeking. It's what their Facebook posts are about. Okay? So, no problem. Just give them constant attention. Problem comes later when it's a longer term relationship and you find out it's insatiable. You can't possibly give them all the attention they require. So that's the note on that. But if you prefer, and here's my analogy for you, if you prefer to do the NFL life, if you prefer to do NFL relationships as opposed to be a semi-pro guy, then you can listen to the rest of what I have to say for you. Now, you might not know what the semi-pros are, but many of you, I'm sure the older guys do. Semi-pros are these leagues around that anybody can join up pretty much. And it's, you know, those guys that they don't want to put the effort into going on and playing college ball because maybe they didn't want to have to keep going to school or couldn't figure out how to get in or whatever, but they can't let go of football. So they go join a semi-pro league. And here's the semi-pro experience right there in your notes. You pay for everything. You come up with your equipment, you pay fees, and you will receive nothing of lasting value. They're not going to pay you. And few people will ever see or care about what you're doing in the semi-pros. So maybe that's what you want, and that's all right. But if you want an NFL experience, you find out that you receive all the equipment, all the medical care, everything you could possibly need. They take care of you. Secondly, you get paid really well. You get an NFL contract, you get 6 figures. And thirdly, people desire to follow you, and they want to know all about you. They want to know all about your team. Everybody's your buddy in the NFL. So that's our analogy. So when we're talking about 2 different groups of women, like the semi-pros, the seductive woman described in Proverbs 5, and I gave you all of Proverbs 5. If we had an hour, we would delve into Proverbs 5 together, but instead I printed it off for you so you can do that on your own. But this is what it describes. Number 1, she takes from you and she leaves you wounded in the end. Number 2, you receive regret, you get nothing good for your children, and in the end you get death. Number 3, others will look on you with pity in the end. This is where Solomon goes on to describe who she's become in Proverbs 19:13 and 27:15-16. Those verses talk about the quarrelsome wife and what she's like, and it's not fun. So he ought to know. This man knew what he was talking about. In contrast, just as big a contrast as semi-pro and NFL, in contrast to the seductive woman is the godly woman. And here's what she'll give you. You will gain an intimate relationship. You'll know intimacy that few people get to understand. And it will build you up and it will bless you. You will receive such immense blessings that it spills over to others, especially your kids. That's my parents on the front of this book. They were married 72 years. When my dad passed in 2013, Kim Vucelich came all the way to Cambridge, my dad's funeral, because she was afraid that my dad passing at 95 would mean there would be a couple dozen people in the church. She walked in and her jaw dropped. That church was packed out to the rafters, because even at 95, that man and his wife, my mom, who's now 100, continued to bless people because of their marriage, because of their godly marriage. It's an incredible thing, and I've been so blessed by it. So that's what you get. The third thing you get is that others will want to emulate and imitate your life. If you want to check this woman out in detail, Solomon knew about her too. You go to Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. There's a detailed description there. So God's plan is to bless marriages, to bless people through marriage. That was his plan from the beginning. One man and one woman for a lifetime. That was his plan. In Malachi, he reveals what he was going after. And that was godly offspring. Men, you need a vision. You need a vision for your life to make up your mind. What sort of man do you want to be? What sort of a family do you want to have? It starts with who you are becoming in Christ. And then you set your mind on waiting for the woman that God is preparing for you and recognizing that she is special. She is worth waiting for. And she will be looking for a man who has integrity, shows initiative, and lives a life that demonstrates intentionality. So the question that I put before you is, are you a poser or are you the real deal? One of my favorite movies is Remember the Titans. And when the team's at camp, that scene where Coach Boone challenges the men to think about, are they posers? Or in other words, are they cowards? And he asks, who is a coward? Who's a coward? Cowards won't block. Cowards won't tackle. Cowards won't go after fumbles. Remember that? I'm going to stop because I could just keep quoting, but I want to look at that. What's it mean to be a coward? Cowards won't block because a coward won't do the right thing day in and day out. He can't keep a job. He won't do hard work. He won't keep a pure heart and keep himself and his family safe from addictions and other things that would threaten the family. And that's because he lives for himself and he's lazy. A coward won't tackle. He won't take on tough issues. He won't stay in the face of adversity. He quits. He leaves. And it's because he lives for himself and he's lazy. And a coward won't go after fumbles. What's that look like? Well, when relationships get difficult, and all relationships get difficult, take work, you may experience anger, bitterness, dysfunction in the family, brokenness, all kinds of things can come your way. And for the coward, he's too prideful to see his responsibility in it. It goes right back to what we said at the beginning, taking ownership. Coward won't do that. And it's because he lives for himself and he's lazy. Well, who is a man of Christ? That's what you've been looking at, and that's where we want to spend the rest of our time. Men of Christ do block. They protect themselves and their family. He keeps his own heart pure, and he seeks to encourage others to do the same. He's all about having an accountability partner and being out in the open. A man of honor. He guards his heart against sin and addictions that would seek to destroy him and his family. He understands that that's what sin's out to do. And it's because he's a selfless man. He's determined to follow God's vision for his family. And men of Christ, they tackle. They tackle, man. Take on sin in his own life. He encourages others to do that. He's proactive when there's issues. Shows initiative and being intentional in regard to conducting his life. And that's because he's a selfless man determined to follow God's vision for his family. Men of Christ go after fumbles. They humble themselves and initiate reconciliation in broken relationships. He's quick to own his part of the quarrel, and he seeks forgiveness. In 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 21, God commands us all of us, that we are to have a ministry of reconciliation. It starts in our own families, and it extends on wherever we are, on the job, on your team, people around you, your friends. Be the one that asks for forgiveness, all the things that Mark talked about. And the reason why men of Christ go after fumbles is because they are selfless and they are determined to follow God's vision for their families. So that's the bottom line. You want an NFL life, I just gave you the outline for it. I spent a lot of time talking to former Crusader guys that come back and they may call up and they, this and that's happened. And well, let's go back to what you were talking about when you're here with the coaches, and they know it. They know it. I rarely have to say much when I'm talking to one of these guys because they already know. They've heard the teachings. I just ask them questions. Let's just review again. So that's the end of my time. And I'm going to ask my husband to close us in prayer.
Thank you for your words. I can't concur that the right